October 1943. A de Havilland Mosquito drops out of cloud at more than 400 miles per hour. No bombs, no escort, only cameras, and 2 men who refuse to pull up. The pilot holds the nose down as German Flak opens fire. Black bursts climb toward the aircraft in perfect, practiced timing. The navigator braces himself, knowing there are only 2 possible outcomes now: impact or breakthrough. What happens in the next seconds will quietly rewrite how wars are photographed. By late 1943, the skies over occupied Europe belong to the Reich. Anti-aircraft guns ring every port, factory, rail junction, and stretch of fortified coast. Reconnaissance flights have become one of the most dangerous missions of the war, not because they fight, but because they must be predictable long enough for a camera shutter to work. High altitude means safety, but haze. Low altitude means clarity, but death. The Allies need both. They are getting neither. Photographic intelligence drives everything: invasion planning, bombing priorities, naval movements. But German defenses have adapted. Fighters sit ready near the coast. Flak batteries are calibrated to known altitudes and approach routes. Anything slow is hunted. Anything steady is bracketed. Reconnaissance squadrons are bleeding crews faster than replacements can be trained. The photographs that do return are often unusable, blurred by evasive maneuvers, obscured by smoke or cloud, taken from angles too shallow to reveal real structure. At RAF Benson, analysts lean over light tables, squinting at grainy prints. They mark what might be gun emplacements. They guess at bunker shapes. They know the truth. Guesswork kills paratroopers. Guesswork sinks landing craft. Guesswork collapses invasions. Operation Overlord is coming, and the Allies are flying half-blind toward the most defended coastline on Earth. There is one aircraft that still offers a sliver of hope. The Mosquito. Built of plywood and speed, it carries no defensive guns. It survives by being faster than trouble. Reconnaissance variants trade bombs for fuel and cameras, flying alone and unprotected, trusting velocity and altitude. But even mosquitoes cannot escape physics. A camera needs stability. A useful photograph needs detail. And detail requires getting close. Squadron leader Adrian Warbird already understands this. He has flown more reconnaissance missions than most pilots survive. Malta, North Africa, the Mediterranean. He has photographed invasion beaches, enemy convoys, and harbors packed with warships. His logbook is a catalog of risks that should have ended in fire and wreckage. Some call him reckless. Others call him indispensable. Warbird calls himself curious. In the autumn of 1943, he transfers to a special duties unit. The assignment is deliberately vague. The targets are not. He will photograph what others cannot. He will go where doctrine says not to. And he will do it in a Mosquito modified for a single purpose: getting impossibly close and getting out alive. The briefings are blunt. Existing reconnaissance of German coastal defenses is inadequate. The Atlantic Wall appears as shadows and smudges. Bunkers blend into cliffs. Gun positions hide beneath camouflage nets. Analysts need photographs sharp enough to count firing slits and measure concrete thickness. They need angles no high-altitude sortie can provide. Warbird studies the mission parameters. He reads the recommended altitudes. He notes the survival statistics. Then he sets them aside. There is always a gap between what manuals prescribe and what war demands. Warbird has built his career inside that gap. His navigator, Frank Bastard, joins him in the mapping room. Together they trace the Normandy coastline. Cliffs, gun belts, patrol patterns. Bastard asks what Warbird is thinking. Warbird tells him they will fly lower than anyone expects, lower than doctrine allows, lower than the guns are designed to engage effectively. Bastard does not argue. He has flown with Warbird before. Warbird is not reckless by nature. He is methodical. He grew up between worlds: India, England, boarding schools that taught discipline but never quite contained him. He joined the RAF in 1939, not from patriotic zeal, but because flying was the only thing that fully held his attention. Early in the war, reconnaissance is considered a backwater posting. No dogfights, no glory, just cameras and long hours over empty sea. Warbird thrives. Reconnaissance is a puzzle. Every mission asks the same question: how do you see what the enemy wants hidden? He experiments. He flies lower than briefed. He approaches from odd angles. He lingers over targets when others would turn back. His photographs improve, sharper, clearer, more useful. Superiors debate whether to discipline him. His results make the decision for them. In Malta, under siege, Warbird becomes a legend. He flies multiple sorties a day in aircraft patched together with improvisation. His intelligence directs strikes that sink convoys and strand entire enemy formations. Decorations follow, then bars to those decorations. They change nothing. He remains disheveled, informal, privately exhausted. He watches friends vanish weekly. He understands the mathematics. Every sortie reduces the odds of survival. He simply chooses to keep flying. By 1943, he is one of the RAF's most experienced reconnaissance pilots. When asked to solve the Atlantic Wall problem, he accepts without hesitation. He knows what happens when intelligence fails. Men die on beaches because someone guessed wrong. He studies the Normandy maps again. Cliff heights, radar coverage, likely gun depressions. He requests modifications to his Mosquito, reinforced camera mounts, expanded film capacity, and permission to fly the mission his way. Permission is granted, largely because everyone knows he will fly it his way regardless. The problem, as always, is altitude. Reconnaissance doctrine is written in blood. Fly too low and Flak kills you. Fly too high and the photographs lie. The recommended compromise, around 18,000 feet, is useless over the Atlantic Wall. The Germans know the altitude. They know the routes. They calculate firing solutions before aircraft arrive. Planners need images measured in inches, not yards. Warbird proposes something else. He will approach at wave-top height, below radar coverage, until seconds from the cliffs. Then he will climb, not to 18,000 feet, but to just over 2,000, just long enough for the cameras to fire. Then he will dive back to the sea and disappear before the guns can adjust. The briefing room falls silent. Someone says it is suicide. Someone says radar will see him. Someone says the airframe will not survive the dive. Warbird listens calmly. Then he tells them he will fly tomorrow. He has watched German gunners for years. They fire where aircraft should be, not where they are not supposed to be. Appear where doctrine forbids, and the gunners hesitate. 2 seconds, maybe 3. Sometimes that is enough. That night, Warbird walks alone across the darkened airfield. The Mosquito waits in its dispersal bay, plywood skin gleaming under blackout lights. He does not sleep much. He never does before missions like this. Dawn arrives cold and clear. The weather is better than expected. Good for cameras, bad for survival. Warbird and Bastard climb aboard. The engines start, and the Mosquito lifts into a pale morning sky, heading toward the most fortified coastline in Europe. The Mosquito schemes the channel at 50 feet. At this height, the world compresses. There is no horizon, only gray water rushing beneath the fuselage and the vibration of 2 Merlin engines pushed close to their limits. Salt spray flicks the windscreen. Any lower, and the propellers would strike the sea. Any higher, and German radar might notice. Frank Bastard reads out the navigation checks in a steady voice. Distance to coast. Time to climb point. Fuel state. His calm is not bravado. It is discipline, the kind that keeps men functional when fear would otherwise take over. Warbird adjusts the heading by inches, lining up on a specific stretch of Normandy coast west of Arromanches. This is where intelligence believes the defenses are thickest. This is where the invasion will either break through or bleed out. The French coastline appears as a thin gray line, then resolves into cliffs rising abruptly from the sea. 200 feet of chalk and concrete. Camouflaged shapes sit atop them, barely visible from the air, invisible from altitude. Warbird holds altitude until the cliffs fill the windscreen. Then he pulls back, hard. The Mosquito claws upward. Speed bleeds off violently as velocity converts into altitude. The airframe groans, plywood and glue protesting forces they were never designed to endure. 1,000 feet, 1,500, 2,000. The aircraft levels out directly over the fortifications. For 5 seconds, the Mosquito flies straight and level over the Atlantic Wall. The cameras fire. Below them, the deception collapses. Concrete bunkers snap into sharp relief. Gun embrasures are suddenly visible, dark mouths cut into pale stone. Trenches reveal themselves as geometric scars in the earth. Obstacles embedded in the sand show exact spacing and orientation. This is what the planners have needed for months. and the Germans react. Every gun opens fire at once. Flak erupts around the Mosquito in tight, disciplined patterns. Black bursts blossom ahead of the nose, then behind, then closer, walking toward the aircraft with lethal precision. Tracers streak upward in orange lines, converging where the aircraft should be. A shell explodes off the starboard wing. Shrapnel tears through the skin. The Mosquito shudders, but holds. Another burst detonates above them. The shockwave slams the aircraft downward. Bastard grips his chart table, calls out that the film is running. 5 seconds. That is all Warburton allows. He shoves the control column forward. The Mosquito pitches into a dive so steep it feels like falling off the world. 60 degrees becomes 70. The airspeed needle races past redline. Warning lights flicker. Something in the tail rattles loose. The engines scream as the aircraft accelerates toward the sea. The ocean rushes up at an impossible speed. At 1,000 feet, Warburton begins easing out of the dive, not pulling, but coaxing the aircraft back toward level flight. The G-forces crush them into their seats. Bastard's vision narrows, then clears. 50 feet. The Mosquito levels out so low the propellers whip the water into white spray behind them. For several seconds, the Flak continues, blind, angry, ineffective. Then it stops. The gunners have lost them. They are gone. The cliffs fall away behind them. The Mosquito streaks back across open water, wounded but intact. Bastard checks the cameras. The film magazines are still seated. The mount's held. The mission has succeeded. Warburton does not celebrate. He sets course for England and says nothing. His breathing is shallow. His hands remain steady on the controls. He knows the aftermath will come later. The tremor, the exhaustion, the realization of how close they came. They land at RAF Benson less than an hour later. Ground crew swarm the aircraft immediately, pointing at shrapnel holes, dented panels, torn fabric. Someone whistles softly. Another shakes his head. Warburton shuts down the engines and sits in the sudden silence. Then he climbs out, lights a cigarette, and walks straight to intelligence. He does not wait for the film to be developed. He already knows what it will show. By evening, the photographs are on light tables in London. Analysts lean closer. They stop guessing. They can count firing slits, measure bunker thickness, trace trench networks, identify blind angles and overlapping fields of fire. Engineers begin calculating charge sizes. Naval officers plot bombardment coordinates. Infantry planners redraw assault maps. The Atlantic Wall is no longer a shadow. It is exposed. Copies of the photographs move quickly across desks, into briefing folders, onto the tables of men planning the largest amphibious invasion in history. Within days, Eisenhower's staff has them. Within weeks, Overlord planning advances decisively. The mission is not described as suicidal. It is described as successful. Other crews attempt variations of Warburton's method. Some succeed. Others are shot down. The tactic is unforgiving. It works only when surprise, weather, timing, and nerve align perfectly. Warburton continues flying. He refines the approach, alters angles, adjusts timing, learns which radar stations mask which sectors, which gun belts react fastest, which stretches of coast offer momentary gaps. Frame by frame, sortie by sortie, the Atlantic Wall becomes mapped in detail. By early 1944, Allied planners possessed the clearest photographic intelligence ever obtained of the German coastal defenses. It is not perfect, but it is enough. Enough to plan. Enough to act. On June 6, 1944, when the invasion comes, naval guns engage known targets with precision. Demolition teams know which obstacles matter. Infantry units land with maps showing strongpoints within 100 yards of their positions. The casualties are still horrific, but they are not blind. Thousands of men live because someone flew low enough to see the truth. The photographs taken during those seconds over the Normandy coast changed everything. Naval planners finally knew where to aim. Engineers knew which bunkers could be cracked and which would require direct assault. Infantry commanders landed with maps that showed not guesses, but realities, fields of fire, blind spots, and concrete thickness measured in inches. Casualties on D-Day were still horrific, but they were not catastrophic. Thousands of men survived because someone had flown low enough to see the truth. Adrian Warburton never saw the invasion he helped make possible. In April 1944, Just weeks before Overlord, he took off on another reconnaissance mission over Germany. His Mosquito did not return. No distress call. No wreckage at the time. He vanished into occupied airspace, another name added to the long list of pilots who flew too many missions and finally ran out of luck. Decades later, Luftwaffe records revealed the likely fate of his aircraft. A Mosquito shot down near Munich. Personal effects confirmed the identity. Warburton was buried with honors more than half a century after his final flight. What remained were the photographs. They sat in archives labeled only with dates, coordinates, and technical notes: altitude, lens type, exposure time. No mention of Flak. No mention of the dive. Just clean, clinical intelligence that helped shape the largest amphibious invasion in history. Warburton's innovation was not a new aircraft or a better camera. It was the understanding that German defenses were built to defeat predictable behavior. So he became unpredictable. He flew where doctrine said no pilot should fly. He stayed where survival statistics said no aircraft could remain. He treated reconnaissance not as observation, but as confrontation. The dive over Normandy was not recklessness. It was clarity. Warburton believed that guessing cost lives, and that knowing, even briefly, even at terrible risk, was worth the price. He paid that price himself, but the men who landed on those beaches paid less because of it. There is a photograph in the Imperial War Museum of a Mosquito flying low over water, engines cutting vapor through cold air. It looks calm, controlled, ordinary. It was anything but. That image represents 5 seconds over the Atlantic Wall when a pilot chose certainty over safety. A decision made in silence, recorded only on film, and felt across an entire war. That is how history is often changed, not by speeches or charges, but by someone willing to fly closer than anyone else dared, long enough to see what was really there.